The game itself, this is going to be a review of The Last of Us Part 2. I told you guys I was going to review it. I wanted to kind of play the game again to try to review it. And honestly, I think I've seen enough. I don't think I need to play it again to kind of see what's going on. Naughty Dog was really good with exploration. They kind of based themselves off of a very linear type of gameplay when they did the Crash Bandicoot series. But then in the Crash Bandicoot series, you have multiple little secret areas you can go into due to the limitations of the PlayStation 3 or 1, excuse me. They saw the trend and basically was a little bit more open and more freedom due to the Grand Theft Auto demos and shit like that they were working on. So they created like a more open platformer, which was Jack and Dexter. Grand Theft Auto really took off. So the next game that they kind of was influenced by was the Grand Theft Auto 3, and they decided to make their game completely open world. From that point on, that's what they ended up doing was a whole open world setting. That's what they were attempting to do with their game. Cool, great. I think I was saying this before. The PS3 wreaked havoc on development time and things of that nature. And it was very hard to develop for. And even though it was much more powerful, there was a lot of issues trying to get polygons on the screen at once while still keeping a stable frame rate. So they opted to go a very linear path again, um, which because it was so damn linear, Uncharted, um, what is it, Drake's Fortune? Uncharted Drake's Fortune was extremely linear with some puzzle elements in there. So that was your exploration. I remember the first puzzle you encountered was an underground area where you had to light a brazier, um, and it was almost mindless, if you will, when it came to lighting the brazier and moving from point A to B. So essentially, as Terry was saying, which is the other person that's in the video, um, it was ways to break up the gameplay either via these exploration puzzle settings, which was super easy, so you can get to the next cutscene, or you had these conversations, world building, where you slowly walk with your companion, and they basically say what they, kind of flesh out the world a little bit. That's essentially what they were kind of going for. My particular issue is because when I was younger, I was a big fan of um, exploration games, adventure games. And despite the fact that Uncharted is considered an adventure game, it's severely lacking in exploration. It's literally very linear. It's very specific areas you can climb. And this has been a trend for Naughty Dog for a while, which kind of leads me into Uncharted, The Last of Us Part 2. You are able to climb things, and it's not as automated as it was before. And this particular area is very open. It's about as open as you can possibly get when it comes to the formula that Naughty Dog has been making. But my particular issue is this: now that you got an easier system to develop for, and you want to keep that linear gameplay aspect, you should be able to go through these buildings. You know what I'm saying? And you can't. There's very select areas you can go into within this particular area, which gives like basically a false illusion of it being open at all. Um, Lastly, it's going to kind of go into game gunplay, which I won't up on. So we're just going to talk about the exploration. The game is designed in a very specific way where shootouts could possibly happen. There's cars strategically placed. Really, those cars could be basically replaced with boxes, really. So the same formula as what they were doing with the Uncharted game. These to replace the boxes with cars that you can hide behind, and nothing's really destructible either. So you have no penalty. You get to stay behind things. Very few things are destructible. That being said, if you can follow my lead on that one, Terry, what have you noticed?
Strictly concerning exploration, it's kind of a continuation of the previous game. Now, of course, like with Seattle, there's some kind of opening and stuff. However, I don't really feel like it adds much. I mean, you do have like collectibles and such, but I, point being is that because there's so much focus on just a specific group of characters, like there's not much substance that exploration really brings. Um, you you don't really find anything interesting about the world necessarily. You just find things like maybe schedules or people like having a conversation. I mean, I know that there's a part where there was a bank robbery, right? And they let the guy in there, and there is some nice flavor text here and there, but ultimately, because the game is so focused on a strong narrative, it it cannot allow the player to go too far or allow the exploration system to be too exhaustive, because then you would get distracted from their masterpiece, right? Being sarcastic, of course. So
Hey,
it's
hey.
more or less a continuation of the previous game. It's some areas are more open ended, but it's mostly linear. And
It's an
even when
open
you
linear.
open linear, yeah, even when it comes to combat itself, like I feel like the game
Oh,
still
you talk
neglects
about
player
combat. You
agency.
talk about combat. Is that all you have to say
Yeah.
about exploration?
Well, no, this little piece ties into exploration in that you have a lot of set piece events.
Okay.
So in order for those events to trigger, naturally you can't have the player just go anywhere or take any route they want to in exploring the area. They have to be funneled repeatedly and repeatedly for either cutscene or walking segment or Claymore goes off and kills the horse, but Ellie's perfectly okay, like shit like that. So that kind of ties into the lack of exploration um, with all those set piece moments. So that's about it, though.
Now we're going to go on to actual combat, and obviously right now I'm not really playing the game. I'm just kind of walking around just for background, a background, stuff. Um, God, I hope I can hear myself. Yeah, okay, cool. So gunplay. Now, with gunplay, what you'll notice, and I can't really show it now, is I don't want to trigger shit. Well, I'm out of ammunition anyway. One of the things that they have mastered is the fact that when you shoot, the recoil shakes the camera in such a way where you kind of feel it. It impacts you. They pretty much nailed that in that regard. Um, so kudos to them on that one. And just goes to just the weight and meatiness of it. And that's for gunplay. Okay, now for melee, the illusion that you have, thinking that you can do some sort of combo or whatnot. All right, so you could dodge. Still the same button mash. You know what I'm saying? Three hit. Three hit combo. I mean, three button, three square combo that you would get, and nothing more to it. Now, the way to combat this is they have contextual animations where if you're near something, the characters automatically will, you know, use a contextualized animation to, you know, give it more of a diverse feeling. But ultimately, you still have the same combos, and you may be able to block, and they may block you, and you can dodge. It really, to me, adds very little to the game because of the simplicity of the AI, which is my next issue. Now, I want to stress the reason why I made this game and made this video in the first place is people seem to not understand me personally. Anybody that follows me or talks to me via Twitter or YouTube as to why I don't like the game. This is the reason why I don't like the game. When I play games, I expect to play games. And a lot of the times when it comes to the actual gameplay, non-exploration, I'm forced into walking and listening to whatever conversations that they had. I can't run. I can't do anything beyond that point. Which to me, they could have just made a fucking cutscene instead of forcing me to do it. But that gives you the sense of fake, like the illusion of control, when you can't leave the conversation so well. Be that as it may, going back to the AI, there's a game that is 19 years old that has some of the best AI in any kind of stealth-like game or adventure game, which is Metal Gear Solid 2. Um, when you play games like that, maybe you guys are so young and you think that this is a masterpiece because, well, it's one of those things where, wow, the graphics look so good and the animations look so good, you forget that the AI has no self-preservation. They don't really run away, which was present in the demo of The Last of Us Part One, where they get scared and they can run away. Now they may every now and again do it, but if I have a shotgun, I'm not challenging you. If I have a fucking handgun, I'm out. And in this particular case, they will challenge you when they have a handgun. They bring a handgun to a shotgun place or a shotgun fight. That's the particular issue. Not only that, but in Metal Gear Solid 2, if you got caught, you were able to evade the enemies. In this game, if you get caught, they will continue to look for you until the end of time because they want you to essentially, engage them. Which, in essence, you have no control over um your encounters. You can't snuff them out. You can't, make them pass out or anything. You have to kill them, or you have to find it, and it closes off that area. But there's a lot of situations where you can't do a damn thing. You are forced to kill them. And in a Metal Gear Solid, you had the option to knock them out, whether it be gun, or they had in Metal Gear Solid 3, it's the same extension, or chloroform form, where you can knock them out that way, or you could choke them out and make them pass out, which I don't know why that's not in this game. It's just beyond me. You know what I'm saying? All for the sake of the narrative. Not only that, but you can't hide bodies either. There's a whole bunch of tall grass everywhere. You can't hide anything. But furthermore, there was a lot of different things where if I did something in Metal Gear Solid, they will try to smoke me out, such as throwing smoke grenades. I've watched the video online and encountered it myself where you can endlessly, kill the enemy. The AI would notice the enemy dead, and then they will follow suit. Oh, what happened? And then that's how that will work.
Oh.
And then they will go to the body. Oh, Lily is dead, and they will just be led to their slaughter. And that's what breaks the AI in the game. Whereas in Metal Gear Solid, they're not fucking with that area. Or if they do fuck with that area, they bring a whole bunch of fucking people with them before they even touch the area. There was a scene on the tanker where you could hide into the locker room, and they'll throw a fucking gas grenade in there. And if that didn't fucking catch you, they look under things. They move shit around. They do a complete sweep of the area. And if you so happen to hit well, then you don't have to worry about it. You know what I mean? And that's what gave that game life. It wasn't even linear, to be honest with you. They had like that whole boat you can basically explore. Sure, it was just a boat that you can explore, but there was multiple areas. In this one, you have all these buildings everywhere, but you can only explore the ones that they wanted you to explore due to cutscenes and whatnot. Terry, what's your thoughts on AI and gunplay?
Well, that's that's underwhelming to say the least. Um, I mean, in terms of gunplay, I mean, I agree in that, presentation-wise, they do a good job at making you kind of feel the impact, the sound effects, all that kind of comes into play where, at least in terms of kind of pulling you into the setting, they do a good job at that. Unfortunately, as you said, like with the AI,
Before you go on, let me just sneak this in there. And a lot of times too, Ellie has a certain amount of moves in her moveset that's underutilized. You can't go under certain vehicles because it's an invisible fucking barrier, or they put trash under there so you can't go. So the sneaking aspect you can't even fuck with either. But I just want to throw that in there. Go on.
Yeah. But, of course, as when you start out, like your things like your gun handling and such is a little loosey-goosey, but, those vitamins or whatever you pick up, you can kind of improve like recoil or steadiness, so on and so forth. So, I mean, at least from the moment to moment, like it does stress like the emphasis of like making your shots count, steadying your aim, so on and so forth. But unfortunately there's some artificiality that kind of breaks the immersion, and AI is one of them. In that, you can do a great job at kind of sneaking around, but it's like if one guy sees you, it's like they all just telepathically just know where you are, so you're kind of boned. As you kind of made the comparison with
And you
Metal Gear
can't
Solid
escape,
2.
and you can't escape them until they're dead. Once they notice you.
It's a perpetual alert. Um, but even as well, like even if you don't get caught and you're doing the stealth approach, like the AI, their responsiveness is kind of like, you know,
It's slow.
there's the theatrics of, oh, someone's dead, oh my god, but in terms of how the AI, like their, like you said, self-preservation and awareness, like you can have a shotgun and some guy will try and come at you with, like, a baseball bat or something, and it's like that's kind of suicide. But you just have all these set piece moments where they have to, they're trying to spruce up the gameplay by kind of changing things or just kind of overwhelming you. Um, but unfortunately, about halfway through the game, like the gameplay, you really realize it just becomes a means to an end. It's just there's just enough there to take you from one narrative set piece to the next. But unfortunately, just the gameplay, it's there. And once you play through the game once, um, there's really not that much substance to it, unfortunately.
Another thing too. I haven't played this game in a while, so that's why I get my ass kicked. I don't even know how to. I was trying to switch arms or hands and shit, but either way, um, I can work on that a little bit later. One other thing that they had in Metal Gear Solid was the very fact that they will see shadows or they will see wet footprints, things like that that was done 19 years ago. Not just hearing things. And another thing too, they get all, you know, if they did spot you, it's like they're extremely nearsighted, like they're legally blind, like they can't really make you out even though you're in your face, and they're like, "What is that? Is that one of my men? Is it? Oh shit, it's her." You know what I mean? Even with the whistling, they had the whole whistling with the Seraphite people, which could have been a really cool thing, but all they did was throw a whole bunch at you and then place them in places where they could overlook a certain area, so you get caught if you weren't hidden in grass or you know what I mean. And they still, if you're overlooking somebody that's hiding in grass, you should be able to see it. But then the people, "Oh, you always say realism. What about Ghost of Tsushima? Ghost of Tsushima is just not like that either. It's not realistic. That's not how they say." So we're not talking about based in the game's environment is the thing. You know, based in the game's environment and what they told you how the game should function is my problem. How their lore, and there's contradictions in the lore. That's the problem. And that's how the gameplay is in this game. It's unfortunate, but that's how they have shit set up, unfortunately. Let's talk about graphics. Let me do that. Now, we haven't mentioned about the graphics and how gorgeous the game looks. Now, they have screen space shadowing, they have pseudo global illumination light bounce system going on. The grass can move. They have a lot of tall grass in the area. One thing I noticed about the grass in this game, it seems to have like a loading hiccup. So you can see like the jumps in between animations, which I wasn't really, to be honest. So, um, one of the it's I guess you could say it's highly interactive for the things that are there. Like this little box here, I can't knock this off. You know what I mean? It's glued. I know that's not the right terminology, but it's glued to the environment. It's not a thing that's interactable. It doesn't have any physics. Um, and you would expect in a game that is linear for it to have physics, but I guess most of the physics is from Ellie and the program that went into, she gets cut, the blood soaks through her clothing and shit like that. So I could see why it is. Now it is 1440p, so it doesn't have that 4K look, but the anti-aliasing that's on this game or in this game is really really top notch. Animations obviously are really good. That's Naughty Dog has a pedigree with animations, but in this one in particular, they really put the R&D work into the animation. Shadows, I would say it's not that great. You can you can obviously see the show they call it shadow cascades and the different points that it goes through. And just, I get it. The game is a very graphically intensive game, but it is still linear. And a lot of things that you see in the background are not, you know, they're not interactable, and they don't have any inside or anything like that. There's no, now you got these clouds. They had this in Uncharted 4, but none of the clouds in this game is volumetric, and the weather doesn't change. There's a lot of things that this game doesn't have that they can allot different things to memory for this linear experience, like real time weather, you know, day and night cycles, things like that. You can craft a really good looking game when you have enough memory. You don't have to allot the memory to weather and things of that nature or heavy physics. A lot of things can go into animations and little simple details like lifting up a toilet seat and it making a sound. You know what I mean? Other games they have to worry about you know whole day and night cycles. So there's that. What is your take on the graphics?
I mean, it's definitely an incredible looking game. Just in terms of you know just the sheer fidelity as such. Um, it's I mean, with any game, I mean, you can't. There are things you can critique, graphically, but when you're dealing with the limited amount of hardware, you can't do an infinite amount of everything. You have to pick and choose. Um, so, if you're going to have something, the higher the kind of graphical fidelity, the kind of less interactivity, and the scale of things will not be as great. So, of course, if you can have something that's more focused, more linear, like the Quantum Dreams, right? Like Detroit, Become Human. Obviously narrative based, obviously linear based. The agency is all in the player choice of the story. So because of that, they're able to kind of, focus more on the kind of graphical fidelity of the game. Um, so it's a matter of pick and choose. You can't have your cake and eat it too, unfortunately. So I mean, visually, yes, the game looks really good. Interactivity, unfortunately, is kind of low. But that's at the cost of trying to visually make something look as eye catching as possible. So it's a for what the game tries to do with its with narrative being the major focus. I mean, it's kind of the right choice. You know, if that's going to be your focus, you're not putting stuff into gameplay, right, or exploration. It's all about how it serves the narrative. So it's a logical choice, I think, for the kind of game that something like The Last of Us is.
Now we're going to go into story. Now, story is extremely important for this game, and it makes or break the game. Because, well, it's a story-driven game, so that needs to be on point. And one way to judge this game is the last one that they made, because it's a part of it, you know. So that being said, there are a lot of issues with the story that I have. Now, people can sit there and say, "Oh, a virus." You mentioned before that a vaccine can only be used for viruses and not like fungus infections. Okay. Regardless of looking at that, there are pacing issues. Some things is like I don't even know what the fuck I'm doing. I played a game that starts off as Joel, and I'm playing the game, and all of a sudden it switches to this unknown girl. For what reason? There was no reason for it. So, I guess to see them meet, Joel and her meet, but it's like I don't know her to care about her playstyle. I don't care about it. You could have made a cutscene for that. Just weird choices like that. Convenient plot holes where Ellie leaves a map because she was so distraught after she murdered millions, like fucking thousands of fucking people.
We are here.
You know, we are right here, and we are going there at 4 o'clock. 4:17, we will be there. So it's like what the fuck is why? You know what I mean? And then to try to introduce after you do something shocking like destroy your protagonist from the last game, regardless of if it's right or wrong. You destroy your protagonist from the first game, which everybody loved. I've seen a video on YouTube where there was a mom and son reaction to The Last of Us, and she loved Joel. She didn't want Joel to be dead. The previous developers of, or sorry, the previous people, the developers at Naughty Dog, said that they wanted Jack and Dexter to be as successful, if not more successful, than Crash Bandicoot, which it wasn't more successful than them. Crash did 7, 8 million. Crash or Jack and Dexter did 3 million, I think tops for each game that they did, roughly. So you don't. I get what they were trying to do for you to feel angry and stuff like that, but this is the thing. A lot of people left Naughty Dog, and they're not the same developer as they were back then. So there's a lot of things that I would say, because Neil Druckmann is not a veteran of the development studio, and he's fairly young. So it's like there was a lot of mistakes that he made. You don't alienate your user base. Now I want to preface that comment that I just made with saying that I'm not a fan of Naughty Dog. I haven't been a fan since 2007. I really don't care about Joel like that. It was not me that cares about him. You can find millions of YouTube videos that would basically state they shouldn't have done that. They pissed off. Yeah, you can make a game divisive. Okay, cool, but to alienate your user base from what they loved from the first game makes it not really a sequel. It makes it something else, and it pisses on, you know, what your previous works. For whatever reason, he has like a hard on for pissing on it. Now that's all I really got to say. It was very sloppily done. Um, the characters that they introduced in there were like Jesse. What was his point? Was I supposed to feel bad that he died? Was I really? I don't know what I was supposed to feel. You know what I mean? The fact that he allowed his ex girlfriend to cheat with his friend Ellie, or Dina was his girlfriend, and she cheated with on Jesse with Ellie. It's like, I mean, you were just cool with it. I just don't. It's just none of it was compelling. There was so many compelling characters in the first Last of Us. Henry, which is the black guy, fucking Tess, Robert, all those people. It's just that every character that they introduced was crafted in that season that they had in that game. Um, and it gave time for the characters to breathe, and that never happened here. And then when you finally did it, it went on too long, and you didn't have anything compelling. I don't care about this girl, this 13-year-old girl that I'm lugging around for God knows what reason. There was no reason for me to lug around Lev. None. No reason. And I really don't give a fuck about Abby either. What was her fucking point? Who cares? Move on. I was really here for Ellie and her fucking story, because that's what's on the fucking box. When I buy The Last of Us, that's what's on the fucking box is Ellie's face, not Abby's. And she's there for half the fucking game. That's my problem. Terry, what you gotta say?
Well, I mean, there's too much really, but I'll just keep talking and you can tell me stop. But um,
We're
it
trying to consolidate it.
it's disheartening. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say. It's disheartening in that
Well, let's start off with the pros.
the
For the
pros.
stories.
In terms of the character, like I'll just say the acting really. In terms of the performance of the characters, I mean,
Sometimes.
you know, sometimes. I mean, relatively speaking, they do a good job with what they have. Now, of course, some of that stuff that's written is kind of ridiculous, but it at
Big
least they're
advantage.
able to, try and work with what they have. They're, as you said, pacing. There's a lot of things that, there. Simple example, okay. Ellie, like, is going, she is eviscerating people, doesn't bother her at all, right? And then you have the scene where she gets into it with Owen and the pregnant lady. I don't know her name. I forget her name.
Ashley
Um,
Bush.
they both die, right? And then they want to do this thing where, like, she feels really bad and then she throws up. It's like, that would make sense if that was the first time that character ever killed anyone, right? Like that kind of bombshell drops on you, taking a human life. But
But
after
you can
everything she's
argue,
been through in the first
you
game,
can argue that she's pregnant.
I don't want to hear that shit. No. Why didn't she throw up the other 400 people when she slit their throat? Come on now.
That's it, eviscerated.
Um,
Like you said,
like it,
eviscerated. Like
it,
really.
it there is the best way I can sum it up is it is a great example of little narrative dissonance, in that what you're doing gameplay wise versus what's going on in the story is they're going in two totally different directions. There's a lot of things that happen where it feels so artificial. Things like where this character should have died 9 times over, but plot armor or great conveniences of like they're
Well, let me jump in
Abby's team.
there.
They're trying to
Let me
find
jump in there
Joel.
real quick. Okay.
How they find Joel.
Not even talking about Abby. In a world that is that cutthroat, and the wolves are definitely cutthroat, you have Isaac, which does whatever he needs to do for torture and whatever he needs. They left Ellie to live multiple fucking times. I could have killed you. It made no sense. You cut loose ends in that kind of world.
Nonsensical
You're
choices.
they all gotta die. But not only that, if she loved her father so much, and she knows who the fuck Ellie is, that she's the cure for all the things, why not try to fucking convince Ellie before murdering this dude that, listen, my dad was fucking murdered by your careholder, her caretaker. Help me find a fucking cure. You're the cure. You have the option, but that's not the story that Neil Druckmann wanted to fucking make. He wanted to do some revenge fucking story, and then try to do little cutesy fucking things like, oh, Ellie, when she kills Owen and the other bitch, Ashley Birch actor, she's gonna throw up. And then when Abby comes into the same place, she's gonna throw up in exactly the same place that Ellie threw up at, to show they're really the same people. That's dumb, stupid storytelling. It's just dumb to me. It was eye rolling, and I didn't see, it was nothing shocking other than before it was leaked, Joel's death. That was it. It just was dumb. I couldn't take it no longer. I couldn't. But go on, please.
Um, but as I was saying, like there's these nonsensical choices that the characters make that it just it's out of their character. As Ellie and her group, the way that they stumble upon Joe and his brother, and just the way that goes down, that just seems so artificial. When you kind of look at, you have this new cast of characters that come in, and there's nothing there that really happens that makes you care, feel invested in them, and then even the narrative itself doesn't care about them when they're dead. Like when the Asian dude dies, or like Abby's friends die. Like the narrative is like, yeah, okay, whatever. And there's so many
Whatever, move
moments
on.
where it's like what's the point, right? Like really, what's the point? Like, and I don't want to hear any bullshit argument about like, well, there's always a happy ending. Sometimes things are sad and blah blah blah. Well, yeah, you have great films like, for example, something like Requiem for a Dream, or great TV shows like Breaking Bad, where yes, it has a bad ending, and technically the characters are the villains or whatever, but there's some kind of moral to the story, right? There's some kind of, like with Walter White, we all knew he was going to die from the very first episode, right? They informed the audience, the tone, everything that happens is consistent with that precedent that they set, and then when he dies, it's not a surprise, but he kind of dies on his own term. He dies admiring his work, right? Duh. But with this game, it's like it doesn't. It's a revenge plot, but then the revenge doesn't happen. But then, like, Allie, Abby should have killed Ellie because she killed her friends, but she doesn't. And then you have moments where, like, Yara, she gets injured, so Abby and Yara's younger sibling, has to go and get this, medical supplies so they can do the amputation. And you go to this huge, long ordeal where it's like an hour and a half, 2 hours, depending on the difficulty you're playing on. and then you come back, and then you save her life, do the amputation, and then like in the next mission, she dies. It was like, what was the fucking
Well,
point of all
the
that?
point
And
was
there's a lot of that.
the
It doesn't make
point for real, like without the sarcasm, the point was for you to get to know Abby and Lev. That was their cutesy way of doing that. And then on top of it, kill two birds with one stone. The stakes are high. Anybody could die. Like I mean, the bitch was gonna die anyway. Her arm is gone, and she was really good at archery. She's gonna fucking die anyway. Or I wouldn't want to fucking live either with a missing arm. Fuck it. That's why she probably did what she did. And then with the whole point, you drum up this antagonist, which was Isaac. Motherfucker's eating an apple. Just the most typical sinister dude that you can possibly get. And his ass gets fucking capped by a one-armed girl that don't really shoot weapons like that. And it's like you build up this whole thing like he's so sinister and he dies off of the hands of somebody that is mortally wounded. Like,
One point I'd like to make. One point I'd like to make, and then I'm done. In that, I remember hearing that when it comes to great story, right? It's great characters and their kind of personal desires is what drives the overall narrative, right? Whereas the wrong way to go about it is you already have like the picture figured out, right? You already have the plot figured out. It's just you have to figure out how to get these characters and contrive things to where these certain events happen because you got it painted out in your mind. And that's kind of what makes things like so nonsensical, artificial, they don't connect, and overall it's just not an enjoyable plot, right? Because everything just feels so contrived because it is, or they're trying to, follow what popular TV or movies are doing recently, and it's like, okay, let's do this, but now we have to figure out how do we get Ellie to do something that's out of character? How do we get Joel to do something that doesn't make with his character? And then you wonder why it feels so artificial, and that's why. It's because it's not the characters that are interesting that you like, that their desires are kind of driving the plot. It's the other way around, and that's why everything is such a mess.
and it's a shame. It's not the fans crying about Joel dying. You guys need to get over that. It's not the fact that nobody likes fucking lesbians or LGBT. It's not none of that. The story is a fucking mess. If it was told better, then the story could work. You know, learning how to regain control of your own fate in life. Like, I can't let this shit run me anymore. I can't let it run me anymore. So I'm gonna let Abby fucking live. You know, I'm gonna let her go, even though she's mortally wounded too. She's fucking dehydrated and everything the fuck else. Uh, just so I could fight a weak chick, which still manages to rip my fucking fingers off. You know what I'm saying? And it's just shitty things like that. Like just so you can, I don't know what they would like. Just shock value the game. That's what this is. Shock value the game. That's all it was. Constant fucking shock value.
It's very clear in popular movies, as well as or certain movies and TV shows. You can clearly see The Last of Us is kind of following those tropes in terms of, as you said,
Especially The
shock
Walking Dead.
value.
You got fucking Glenn.
Oh yeah, Walking Dead's all over that shit. Subverting expectations, shock value, edginess, um, but no real substance. So.
I'm sorry, and that's the reason why I don't like the game.
Mhm.
So the last topic we're going to talk about is the future of Naughty Dog. Now I mentioned this before, and despite the fact that Sony has stated that this was a smash hit and it sold like what 3, 4 fucking million, I guess, within the first 3 days or whatever the case is. Mind you, it was a part of a sequel that sold. It was the top selling sequel. I mean, the top selling game on the last platform. Now, another argument is, well, you can't. This is a different platform now. A lot of people bought a PS4 for the sequel to The Last of Us. So, when they didn't like it, which a lot of people didn't like it, you can go on to this fucking thousands of YouTube channels expressing their disdain for the game. They didn't like it for various reasons. They have their own reasons and entitlement, and then people that like the game has their own reason and entitlement. But just get one thing clear: it has nothing to do with LGBT. It just was a sloppily written game. And it was a shame because the first one had so much focus, whereas this one did not. You go into any store, Walmart, Target, and anywhere else, you find a shit ton of used titles of The Last of Us stacked the fuck up. We're not even going to talk about reviews because the review bombed it. Again, a lot of fucking titles. I have never seen so many stacked up titles of a game. And if the game was so good gameplay wise, why are people selling it off? You got single player games like Bloodborne or fucking Final Fantasy. They didn't sell that the fuck off. You know, they're going to continue to play it. What happened there? Shit, Final Fantasy is successful based off of an old game that they played for hundreds of fucking hours. That goes to show you the amount of substance this game has, which is very little. Point blank period. Regardless of what you say of how successful it was in the first month or whatever you want to fucking say, the game to me is a failure, and the numbers are going to show it. If it does not outsell on a platform that has about 30 to 40 million extra users, that is the most popular platform to date. If Sony somehow couldn't sell this fucking game, it's a failure. I don't care how successful things are. You got fucking, what was that Star Wars movie again, Terry?
What's that?
That Star Wars movie.
Um,
That did well
three.
initially. That did well initially. What was it called?
Well, you had A New Hope, and then you had Return of the Jedi, and
The Return, Last
Jedi.
Jedi, Return. What one of those fucking things? It completely alienated their user base.
Particularly Last Jedi.
Last Jedi.
The second one.
So the problem with this is, right, is when you make a piece of medium or a medium that is for consumption of the general consumer of that field, which is video games in this case, and if you alienate them, your objective really is to make money. Period. Period. This is not a fucking charity. This is not a charity. Charity. If your game did not, if it's not going to do the numbers it was supposed to, based off all the fucking hype that it's gotten, then it's a failure. Because the next game is going to be a big fucking problem. It's going to be a big problem. People are not going to trust Naughty Dog. They are not going to trust Naughty Dog with the next game because of the shit that they've done. I don't trust the quality of your work. You know? It's what it is. The next game that they make is going to be a telling one because people are going to judge them based off of the last game. And what they've done, that alienation, just like the fucking Last Jedi, the sequels didn't do well. Or any other fucking movie that tried to pull some artsy-fartsy stunt. Or tried to appease the certain people that didn't even like the game in the first place. They fail. Now, I am under the impression, like I said before, 8 million was The Last of Us sales for the PS3. And it's sold 4 million so far. If The Last of Us Part 2 does not sell as much marketing as the game had, even if you weren't interested in the game, it was played every fucking where, it had a whole bunch of drama tied to it. If it does not do more than 10 million, it's a failure to me because the next subsequent games are going to be judged harshly. Well, anyway, that is my review of The Last of Us Part 2. Yes, I had to make it as long as it was to get all my little thoughts out there. So definitely, if you like the content, give me a like. It helps out with the fucking video. I appreciate it. Let me know in the comments what you liked or disliked about the video, and if you liked it, a sub would be appreciated. I bid you farewell.